Ms. Okafor-Mills, Judge Harwick received your evidentiary packet Friday afternoon, all 214 pages, and he has already marked it as received into the court record for docket 24-PR-0883, the clerk said, not looking up from her ledger. I nodded. I had known that Friday delivery was confirmed. Camille had held the signature receipt in her hand all weekend, the physical proof that those 214 pages had reached the judge's office before 5 o'clock on Friday. But knowing a folder had been delivered and knowing a folder had been opened were two entirely different states of being. He had opened it. The folder was no longer in transit. The folder was on his bench. The folder had been read. Courtroom 4B was not yet full. Morning light cut through the east-facing windows in long, deliberate rectangles, each one illuminating a section of the gallery and leaving the rest in soft shadow. The judge's bench was empty. The court reporter had set up her station, fingers resting on the stenotype machine, a glass of water within reach, paper rolled and ready. I was seated at the counsel table beside Camille Vargas, my attorney. The table was made of wood, the colour of old cognac, and it felt solid beneath my hands when I gripped the edges. There was a water pitcher on the table with no flowers yet. There was a leather portfolio containing documents I had organised 17 times. There was the spiral notebook I had brought and would not need to open. It was 8:52 a.m. on a Thursday in January. The hearing was scheduled to begin at 9 a.m., which meant the judge would appear in the next 8 minutes, which meant Paulette would already be in the building, already moving toward this room. I had seen her car pull into the parking lot. I had been standing at the basement coffee station, watching steam rise from a paper cup of coffee I did not intend to drink. When I saw her grey sedan ease into a space on the north side of the lot, where the morning sun hit the asphalt first. She had gotten out moving the way she always moved, with a quality of absolute certainty that the world would conform to her presence, that hallways would part, that judges would listen, that her version of events would be the version that mattered because she had the deepest investment in her own narrative. She would come upstairs now. She would walk the hallway where Camille and I had walked 20 minutes earlier, reviewing our strategy, confirming that the folder was secure, that Dr. Winter's report had been received in the judge's file. She might stop to use the restroom. She might check her phone one final time. She might stand alone for a moment with her certainty, gathering it around her like a coat, preparing herself to perform the role she had been constructing for 26 months. The daughter who stayed, the caretaker who sacrificed, the keeper of Ada's true wishes, the one who understood what Ada had really wanted at the end. She would arrive at 9:05 a.m. That was 13 minutes from now. She would be carrying a wine-coloured accordion file under one arm, the accordion file that held her copies of the 3 documents she intended to present as evidence. She would also be carrying a small bundle of pink carnations, wrapped in tissue paper and fastened with a white rubber band. The tissue paper would be slightly wilted from being held. The rubber band would be ordinary and grey. The carnations were Ada's flower. Ada had planted them at 1114 Oleander Drive on a Thursday in April 1994. I had a photograph of that moment, Ada in her gardening gloves, her hands in the soil, her expression caught between concentration and joy. I had been 14 years old. I had taken the photograph without being asked. Ada had been 45. She had been beautiful in a way that did not require beauty to be young. She had owned that house for 31 years before she died. She had tended those carnations for all 31 of those years. She had written about them in her letters. She had pressed photographs of them into her ledger. She had told me, in her final year, that she wanted those flowers to keep growing after she was gone. Paulette was going to bring those flowers to a judge and present them as evidence of grief, as testament to devotion, as proof of the role she had claimed. She was going to arrange them in a water pitcher and position them so that they faced the judge's bench. And she was going to make the flowers themselves speak to what she wanted the judge to understand. I loved her. I was here. I stayed. Therefore, I deserve what she left behind. Camille was reading her opening statement, her pen moving down the page in silence. We had debated strategy for hours. On Wednesday night, after we had received the complete package from Dr. Winters, the 7-page report, the forensic analysis, the comparison images, Camille had walked me through the options. She had laid them out with the precision of someone trained to anticipate every procedural objection. We could reveal the forensic report immediately, give the court her findings up front, announce that the signatures had been examined and found inconsistent with Ada's known handwriting. We could do what Paulette's attorney would almost certainly not expect: preempt her case before she had built it. It was sound strategy. It was also caution. Camille was a negotiator. She had been trained to resolve disputes at the table before they arrived at trial. In probate cases, in her experience, the process moved faster when both parties acknowledged early that they were working with compromised evidence. The word compromised was hers. Compromise implied that both sides had something to offer, something to trade, some ground where they could meet. I did not believe that. I had told Camille, no, we should reveal immediately. No to the entire strategy of cautious disclosure and negotiation. If Judge Harwick had already read the report, and the clerk had just confirmed that he had received the packet, then revealing Dr. Winter's conclusions before Paulette had made her case would only give Paulette time to object, to challenge, to reframe the methodology, to claim that the forensic examiner had misunderstood the tremor in Ada's hands, the weakness in her final signature, the decline in her motor control in the last weeks of her life. Better to let Paulette commit completely to her version. Let her attorney stand and present the 3 documents with confidence. Let her build an unqualified case. Let her say the words out loud. These are Ada's wishes. These are the documents she signed. These are the papers she asked me to file on her behalf. Then the floor would open beneath her. Camille had been learning to trust that instinct. She was still learning. The learning happened in the spaces between what she had been trained to do and what I had asked her to do. The folder had been on Judge Harwick's bench since Friday afternoon. No one had called to tell me this. The court's online docket had not updated. I had driven to the courthouse this morning with the assumption that the evidence was still in process, still travelling through whatever postal system Camille had used. Still possible to lose or be delayed or arrive on the wrong side of a procedural deadline. The folder had occupied my consciousness as something still in transit, still precarious, still subject to the 100 small failures that could derail a probate case before it had begun. But the clerk had just told me that assumption was false. The folder was not in transit. The folder was not waiting. The folder was not precarious. The folder was already there. The folder was marked received. The folder had been read. I opened my leather portfolio and pulled out my own copy of Ada's will. The will that was real. The will that mattered. It was 4 pages, bound with a single brass fastener. The cover page bore Ada's signature, dated March 14th, 2019. The signature was the one I had studied under a desk lamp so many times that I could reproduce it from memory. The distinctive upstroke of the A in Ada. The way the D and K dipped below the baseline in her characteristic manner. The way the final S in Mills curved upward as if she was already reaching toward the next word. The ink was blue. The pen pressure was consistent throughout. Heavy on the downstrokes. Lighter on the lifts. The signature was Ada. The will was hers. The will was real. I had studied Ada's signature the way an art historian studies a masterwork. The way a musician studies a score. Because somewhere in the weeks after the funeral, while Paulette was telling the family that Ada had become confused, while Paulette was presenting documents that supposedly bore Ada's signature, but carried none of the markers that made Ada's handwriting hers, I had decided to pay attention. I had decided that being dismissed did not have to be the same thing as being wrong. I had kept a notebook. I had logged dates and times and specific statements Paulette had made in texts and emails and phone calls. I had written down the day in October when Paulette had texted me. Ada got confused near the end. Even she didn't always understand her own paperwork. I had not replied to that message. I had taken a screenshot instead. I had filed it away. I had continued to pay attention. Over 26 months, I had accumulated 214 pages of evidence, bank statements, medical records, voicemail transcripts, photographs of documents, screenshots of messages, a dedicated notebook where I had logged the consecutive days Paulette had denied me access to Ada. Each date marked, each restriction noted, the progression of isolation documented like a record of tides. The folder containing those 214 pages was now on the judge's bench. The judge had already read it. She arrived at exactly 9:05 a.m. I did not need to look at a clock to know the time. There was that particular shift in air pressure when a door opens. That movement of atmosphere that announces a person has crossed a threshold. I felt it before I registered it. And then I turned. Paulette pushed through the double doors of courtroom 4B, carrying the wine-coloured accordion file under one arm and the pink carnations in the other. Her coat was still unbuttoned. Her purse hung from one shoulder in the practiced angle of someone who has worn a bag in that exact way for 40 years. Her hair had been set, the tight curls she had worn since her mid-40s. The styling that had become so integrated into her presentation that people sometimes could not imagine her without it. She was 64 years old. She moved the way she had always moved, with the certainty that the world would recognize her right to occupy space, to move through rooms, to present her case, to be believed. She had spent the last 26 months performing a narrative. She had performed it with such consistency and such unwavering certainty that she had begun to believe in it absolutely. She had convinced herself that she had earned 1,114 Oleander Drive. She had convinced herself that she had earned the $77,000 in savings at Riverside Bank, Yaniim, the money Ada had accumulated over 50 years of seamstress work. 50 years of bending over fabric and thread, and the bodies of brides and mothers and daughters who wanted something beautiful for their important days. Ada had saved that money carefully, deposited it methodically, tracked every transaction in her own ledger, in her own precise hand. Paulette had convinced herself that she had earned the right to claim it. She had convinced herself that she had earned the right to rewrite Ada's final wishes because she had been present, because she had stayed, because she had done the work of showing up at the hospital and the care facility and the final room where Ada lay dying. She had confused presence with entitlement. She had confused proximity with deservingness. She had not yet learned, and would not learn today, that being near someone is not the same as being owed by them. She approached the counsel table and set the accordion file down with a deliberate precision. It was a gesture designed to register presence, to stake a claim, to make the filing itself into an act of ownership. Then she picked up the water pitcher, the one the court staff had placed on the counsel table during the 8:30 a.m. setup, and she arranged the pink carnations. She did not simply place them, she arranged them. She worked with intention. She rotated the pitcher so that the carnations faced the judge's bench directly, so that when Judge Harwick came through the side door and took his seat, his first view of the room would include those flowers, positioned like an offering, like testimony. She separated two carnations that had been clustered too tightly. She adjusted the height of one stem so that it sat above the others at an angle that would catch the courtroom light. She made an adjustment. She made another. She was performing grief. She was performing devotion. She was presenting the flowers as evidence. Look at what I'm bringing. Look at how I remember her. Look at how I have honored her memory by being here, by standing before a judge, by arranging these flowers with care. What Paulette did not know was that the judge had already opened the folder, and he had already read the contents, and he had already reviewed the forensic examiner's report. He had read Dr. Rochelle Winter's 7-page analysis of the signature on the October 11th, 2023 codicil, a document that Paulette was about to present as authentic, as real, as a valid expression of Ada's final wishes. That document bore a signature, but it bore no signature of Ada. Doctor! Winters had examined the pen pressure on that signature. She had measured the baseline deviation. She had compared the distinctive dip of the D and the K against 32 other authenticated samples of Ada's signature, all of them bearing the marks of Ada's hand across decades. Every check she had written, every card she had mailed, every will and legal document and form. Ada had written in a characteristic way for the entirety of her adult life. On every authenticated document, those letters dipped below the baseline. On the October 11th, 2023 codicil, they did not dip. The signature was traced. The source document had been identified with specificity. A Riverside bank account opening form from 2018. The tracing was mechanical. The signature was not Ada's signature. The signature was a copy of a copy. The mark of an attempt to reproduce something authentic by mechanical means. The folder contained all of this. The judge had already read it. Paulette settled into her chair. Her attorney had not yet arrived. It was 9:07 AE. Counsel for the respondent was scheduled to appear at 9:10 A, which meant she would have 3 full minutes alone with her accordion file and her carnations, and the absolute, unshaken certainty that she had already won this hearing, already claimed the house, already rewritten Ada's will in her favour. She sat with her spine straight. She arranged her hands on top of the accordion file. She did not look at Camille. She did not look at me. She looked at the judge's empty bench with the expression of someone who had made a decision and closed the conversation entirely. She was not nervous. She had never been nervous. Paulette operated from a foundation of certainty so absolute that it had no room for doubt. Confidence did not require the existence of doubt. Confidence only required a person who had lived 59 years without being seriously questioned by anyone in her family. The oldest child stays. The oldest child is responsible. The oldest child is the keeper of truth because she was present. And when the oldest child claims that truth, the family listens. The family does not challenge. The family does not ask for documentation. The family does not say, "Show me your proof. Show me your evidence. Show me the signature that bears Ada's mark." And Paulette had been the oldest child for 59 years. But she had been the oldest child in Ada's presence, and she had never been questioned. She had been the oldest child in Ada's absence, and she had still not been questioned. Not seriously. Not with the weight of a judge and a courtroom and a forensic examiner's report backing up the questions. Until now, at 9:07 a.m. Paulette was still holding the certainty that she had already won. She was still arranging flowers as testimony. She was still sitting with the composed expression of someone presenting a completed and uncontested case. The folder was open. The judge had already read what was inside. But Paulette did not know. In 40 minutes, I would be standing in the courthouse hallway with the appraisal report in my hands, and the weight of that number would be different. The $312,000 would no longer be an inheritance. It would be the stakes of everything about to happen. And then the judge would ask a question, and then the folder would matter, and then the years of documentation would land. I am standing at the tall window at the end of the courthouse hallway, watching the parking lot fill. The morning light is weak and angled from the north, the kind of light that makes the asphalt look grey, even when it is clean. It is Thursday, January 8:12 a.m. The hearing begins at 8:52. 40 minutes remain. In my hands is the appraisal report. Not a copy that Paulette had ordered. Not one that Camille had pulled from the court's disclosure file. This is the report I had ordered myself, 2 weeks after Ada's funeral, from an independent appraiser who had never heard Ada's name and had no stake in what the outcome might mean. The appraisal number is printed on page 3, centered in bold. $312,000. That is what 1,114 Oleander Drive is worth. That is not what it cost Ada. Ada had purchased the house in 1993, I have the date from the county records, for $78,000. She was 44 years old. She was a seamstress. She had saved the down payment from 15 years of careful labor. Prom dresses with hand-sewn beading. Bridesmaid gowns let out and taken in wedding veils that she had learned to handle with the precision of someone who understands that fragility and value are sometimes the same thing. 31 years. Ada had lived in that house for 31 years. She had painted every room twice. She had chosen colours from test samples she had taped to the walls and lived with them for weeks before deciding. She had planted a garden in the backyard. Tomato plants started from seed each spring, roses that bloomed in June, pink carnations that came back every year without asking. She had planted a line of crepe myrtles along the drive. She had replaced the roof in 2008, when the original shingles began to curl. She had updated the kitchen in 2015, choosing cabinets she could afford because she was still thinking in terms of what was within reach, not what was ideal. The house was worth $312,000 in January 2025 because Ada had lived in it for 31 years and had not permitted it to decay. The house was worth $312,000 because she had invested more than money into its walls. She had invested attention, time, the small accumulated choices that compound over decades into something with real market value. But the house was only part of what Paulette had decided belonged to her. There was also the $77,000 in savings at Riverside Bank. I had discovered this fact by requesting Ada's financial statements from the court's disclosure file. The account had been opened on March 8, 1989. The most recent statement, dated September 28, 2023, 7 days before Ada's death, showed a balance of $77,000 and change. The deposits were methodical. They were consistent. They were the product of 50 years of a woman putting away $5 here, $10 there, the way a seamstress saves money, not in one dramatic act of inheritance or windfall, but in the small choices made over decades, choosing to set aside what could have been spent. Paulette had decided that money belonged to her too. Paulette had submitted documents claiming authority over both. She had submitted a beneficiary change form showing her as the sole beneficiary of the Riverside Bank account. She had submitted a codicil to Ada's will that left the house to her. She had submitted a power of attorney that gave her the legal right to act on Ada's behalf. 3 documents, all supposedly signed by Ada, all supposedly authenticated by a notary public. All dated in October 2023, when Ada's mind had supposedly failed, when Ada had supposedly become confused about her own wishes. But Ada's body had already stopped working by October 2023. Ada had died on October 4th. The documents were dated October 11th. I had not yet known to question this. That particular piece of evidence would be supplied by Dr. Rochelle Winters, the forensic document examiner, but standing in the courthouse hallway with the appraisal report, this report that established the house's worth in concrete, measurable terms, I was holding the proof that what Paulette was claiming was worth something. The sum of what Paulette had decided to take from Ada was $389,000. That was the house and the savings combined. That was the full estate. That was everything Ada had built in 31 years. Paulette had decided that Ada's entire lifetime of work, of careful choices, of setting aside and preserving, belonged to her. She had decided this before Ada's body was removed from the hospice facility. She had decided it while Ada was still conscious, still capable of expressing her wishes, though Paulette had made sure that I was not present to hear them. 47 consecutive days, beginning September 14th, when Ada's care transitioned from the hospital to the palliative care facility on Cypress Street. "Ada is resting," Paulette would say when I called at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, or 4 p.m. on a Thursday, looking for the window when Ada might answer the phone. "The doctor says she needs quiet. No visitors right now." I'd written each day in a notebook that I kept in my car, in the passenger seat, where I could see the page. September 14th, September 15th, September 16th. I had not yet understood that I was documenting isolation. I had only understood that I could not see my grandmother. And the reason kept changing. And the reason kept Paulette at the center of it. The parking lot below fills with the ordinary motion of a Thursday morning. A man in a grey jacket pulls his car into a space and locks the door with a deliberate pull on the handle. A woman in a rust-coloured coat walks from the far lot, her pace steady and unhurried. She does not know that her custody case is being called at 9:15 a.m. She does not know that a judge is reading documents that will alter the trajectory of her afternoon, her year, her relationship to the people she loves. I do not know yet that the same will be true for Paulette. I had not known, in the weeks after Ada died, that I was assembling evidence. I had known only that I needed to understand what was at stake. I had known that Paulette was telling the family a story. Ada was confused near the end. Ada had changed her mind. Ada had wanted Paulette to be the keeper of the house and the money, and the right to speak for Ada's wishes, and that the family was listening to that story and believing it because Paulette had been present, and I had been absent, and absence, in families, reads as indifference or selfishness or a failure to care enough to show up. My cousin Michelle had not returned my calls after the funeral. We had been close when we were children. We had spent summers in the shallow end of Ada's pool, diving for coins that Ada had thrown in at the beginning of the afternoon. Michelle had been there at the burial. I had seen her in the funeral program photograph. 3 days later, on October 6th, I had called her at 10 in the morning, not expecting her to pick up, and I had said, "I need to understand what Ada actually wanted. I'm going through her documents, and I'm finding things that don't match what Paulette is saying." There had been silence on the line. Not the silence of someone thinking, the silence of someone deciding whether to speak. Then, "I don't think there's anything I can do. Viv." Auntie Paulette seems to have everything handled. Auntie Paulette. That was what the family called her now. Not Paulette, not Paul. The way Ada had said her name, the way the name came out of Ada's mouth like a small correction. Auntie Paulette, the title reinstating her as the caretaker, the responsible one, the one whose physical proximity to Ada in her final months had acquired the weight of moral authority. I had asked Michelle, "Did you see Paulette change Ada's will? Were you there when Ada signed the new papers?" Michelle had said, "Nah." And then, "But Mom thinks Paulette was just trying to make sure everything was taken care of." Mom was Paulette's sister. The family was protecting the story. My Uncle Robert had called me in November. He had opened with pleasantries. How was I holding up? Was work going well? Was I eating enough? And then he had moved into the reason for the call. "How are you doing with all of this?" he had asked. The "this" meant the probate, the questions I'd been asking, the letter I had sent to the family explaining why I believed Ada's original will. From March 2019 was the authentic expression of Ada's wishes. I had told him that I was trying to understand what Ada had actually wanted. I was going through her documents. The papers Paulette had presented did not align with Ada's handwriting, with the distinctive way Ada formed the letter D and the letter K, with the pen pressure she applied. I had wanted to ask a lawyer about contesting the probate filing. I had wanted to understand my options. He had been quiet for a moment. The silence of someone who is about to deliver a line he has practiced. Then, let Auntie Paulette handle it. Viv, she knows what Ada wanted. She was there. I had said, she was there, but I don't think... And he had cut me off. I think you're going to regret it if you push this. The family needs to stick together right now. Then he had hung up. He was right that she was there. Paulette had been there every day for the last year of Ada's life. She had been there when Ada's mind began to slip, or when Ada's defenses began to slip, when Ada had stopped fighting Paulette's presence, when Ada had begun to accept her daughter's version of things because there was no energy left to argue. Paulette had been present in a way that meant something, and I had not been. I had lived 4 hours away. I had come on the weekends that Paulette allowed, which became fewer as Ada's illness advanced. I had been absent, and in the mathematics of family obligation, in the calculation that happens without anyone naming it, presence equals authority. Absence equals the forfeiture of a claim on truth. 3 weeks after Ada's funeral, I had been quietly removed from the family group chat. There had been no announcement. No, we have decided to remove you. One day, I could see the messages. The photographs of the funeral flowers, the acknowledgements of sympathy cards, the gentle reminiscing about Ada's recipes, and the way Ada laughed. And the next day, I could not access the chat. It was private. It was family. I was the person contesting the will, which placed me outside the family consensus, which meant I did not belong in the space where the family was collectively processing Ada's death. I had taken a screenshot of the last message I could see before being removed. It was from Paulette. It said, Ada was so blessed to have me there at the end. I made sure she was comfortable. I had added that screenshot to the folder where I was beginning to keep everything. Bank statements, medical records, photographs of documents, voicemail transcriptions. I was not yet thinking of it as evidence. I was thinking of it as a record. I was thinking that if I wrote everything down, if I documented everything carefully, the truth would eventually speak for itself. The appraisal report sits heavy in my hands. It is 20 pages. It includes photographs of the kitchen, the master bedroom, the living room with the window where Ada used to sit with her sewing in the afternoon, the hem of a dress across her lap, the light coming from the south. It includes the measured square footage, the assessed condition, the comparable sales in the neighborhood. It concludes $312,000. The garden shed at the back of the property is not pictured in the appraisal. The appraiser's job is to assess the value of the structure and the land. The appraiser does not assess the shed where Ada kept her sewing ledger, the leather-bound book where Ada had recorded every dollar she had spent or saved since 1989. The appraiser does not assess the fireproof box in the shed, the metal container that Ada had purchased from an office supply store in 1994 and kept locked with a key on a chain around her neck until the last weeks of her life. The appraiser does not know what is in that box. Ada had never told me explicitly. But I know it is there. I know Paulette knows it is there. I know that when the time comes, the contents of that box will matter. I had discovered the address discrepancy on a Friday night in late October. I had printed out the probate filing that Paulette had submitted to the courts, the document available to any interested party, any heir, any person with a family connection, and the willingness to ask for it. I had pulled it up on my computer at home at 11:47 p.m. and read through it line by line. Name of decedent, Adès Okafor. Date of death, October 4th, 2023. Date of filing, October 17th, 2023. And then, address of decedent's residence at time of death, 88 Crestfield Lane, Garland, Texas, 75040. 88 Crestfield Lane is Paulette's house. I know this because Paulette had mentioned it in a phone call 3 years earlier. I know this because I had driven past it once, looking at where Paulette lived, curious about the space she had chosen. It is a 2-story colonial with a 3-car garage and an HOA fee of $280 per month. It is respectable. It is not Ada's house. Ada's house is 1114 Oleander Drive. I had written the 2 addresses in my notebook, one below the other. Just the addresses. No comment. No question mark. No exclamation. 1114 Oleander Drive, 88 Crestfield Lane. And then I had written the date. October 20th, 2023. And then I had written nothing else. I had let the fact sit there. I had let the lie sit there. I had let the deliberateness of it, the choice to write Paulette's address instead of Ada's address on a legal document, sit there without commentary. Paulette had listed her own house as Ada's residence. She had submitted a legal document to the court claiming that Ada had lived at a place where Ada did not live. It was such a specific lie. It was such a small lie. It was the kind of lie that someone tells when they are establishing ownership, when they are claiming dominion, when they are deciding that someone else's actual house belonged to someone else now. I hear Camille before I see her. The sound of heels on the polished floor of the hallway, moving with moving fast. She is carrying a leather briefcase and an expression I have learned to recognize. The look of someone who has reviewed evidence and who has made a decision. She stops beside me at the window. She does not speak at first. The 2 of us stand in silence, looking down at the parking lot filling with people who do not know that their cases are about to be called, who do not know that judges are reading documents that will alter the shape of their afternoons. If you have ever been waiting for someone to recognize that what was done to you was deliberate, that the lie was calculated, that the theft was methodical, that the isolation was designed, then you understand why I keep standing at this window. If you have ever been told by family that your suspicions are unfounded, that you are being unkind, that you should trust the person who was present, then you understand why I do not turn away yet, why I stay looking down at the parking lot, why I do not break this moment of knowing what is about to come. Camille says, "The judge has the folder. I confirmed it this morning with the clerk's office. It's marked received." The folder, the 214 pages, the documentation of 26 months compressed into paper and timestamps and forensic analysis. All of it now in the hands of a person whose job it is to decide what is true. I do not let go of the appraisal report. Camille follows my gaze to the parking lot below. A police officer is getting out of an unmarked car. A woman in scrubs is hurrying toward the building. The ordinary motion of people with stakes continuing. "What are you looking at?" Camille asks. "The cars," I say. "The people arriving. I'm trying to figure out if Paulette knows." "Knows what?" I turn the appraisal report over in my hands. The $312,000 has become smaller, lighter, less important than it was when I arrived at the courthouse this morning. The number that represented Ada's life, Ada's choices, Ada's 31 years of intention, the number that Paulette had decided belonged to her, is becoming something else now. It is becoming a detail in a larger story. It is becoming the measure of what someone tried to steal. "That she's already lost," I say. The 47 days begin on September 14th. That is when Ada transitions from the hospital to the palliative care facility on Cypress Street. From that day forward, when I call at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday or 4 p.m. on a Thursday or 10 a.m. on a Saturday, the answering service transfers me. And then Paulette picks up. "Ada is resting," she says. "The doctor says she needs quiet. No visitors right now." I ask her when I might visit. "Tomorrow? This weekend? I live 4 hours away. I am trying to arrange my schedule, my work, my life around the possibility of seeing my grandmother before she dies. Let me check with the doctor. I'll call you back." She does not call back. I call again 3 days later. This time, Paulette answers on the first ring, as if she has been waiting. "Ada had a rough night. She's sleeping. You shouldn't come. I asked to speak to Ada. Just for a minute. Just to hear her voice. She's sedated. Vivian, I wouldn't wake her." By September 20th, I stop asking when I can visit and start asking if Ada is still alive. I am afraid that one of these calls will be different, that Paulette will tell me Ada has died, and I will have missed the window. Missed the last chance to say something, to hold her hand, to be in the room when it matters. Paulette's response changes. "Of course she's alive. She's just very tired. The medication is making her sleep most of the day." I write down these calls. Not formally, not yet, but I'm beginning to notice the pattern. I am beginning to understand that the reason keeps changing, and the reason keeps Paulette at the center of it. Ada Okafor is 76 years old. She is a retired seamstress. She has lived in 1114 Oleander Drive for 31 years. She bought the house in 1993 with a down payment she had saved over 15 years. Money that had come from her own hands. From the prom dresses she had sewn, the wedding gowns, the bridesmaids' gowns, the altar cloths for churches, the baptism outfits for infants. Ada worked with precision. She worked with love. She understood that the clothes people wore on important days were small vessels for memory. For 31 years, Ada has maintained that house. She has painted every room twice. She has planted a garden. She has kept a sewing ledger, a handwritten book bound in leather, the kind of book a woman keeps when she wants to remember what she did. In that ledger, Ada has recorded every dollar she spent and every dollar she saved. She has documented her life with the care of someone who understands that documentation is its own form of truth. On September 22nd, I drive to Cypress Street, Palliative Care. It is a Friday. I have taken the afternoon off work. I have driven 4 hours with the intention of sitting in Ada's room for an hour, maybe 2. I park in the visitor lot. I sign in at the desk. The receptionist, a woman with kind eyes, tells me Ada is in room 407. I walk to the elevator. I press the button for the 4th floor. I find room 407. I knock on the door. Paulette opens it. She's sleeping, Paulette says, and she does not move out of the doorway. I'll just sit with her. I won't wake her. The doctor said no visitors. She needs to rest. I'm her granddaughter. I'm family. I know who you are, Vivian, but she needs to rest. She closes the door. Not a slam, a quiet, deliberate close. I stand in the hallway for 5 minutes. I think about pushing back inside. I think about calling the nurses' station and asking if there is a visitor policy I can check. If there is some official document that supports what Paulette is saying. I think about my mother, Paulette's sister, and how she will react if I make this situation difficult. I think about Ada inside the room, the door closed, and whether she even knows I tried to come. I drive home. I do not see Ada. I drive 4 hours back to my apartment, and I do not get to say goodbye. Ada dies on October 4th. Paulette calls me in the evening. Her voice is steady. She tells me Ada passed peacefully, that she was not in pain, that Paulette was there when it happened. I do not ask if Paulette was there the whole time, or if she stepped out, or if Ada was alone at the end. I do not ask if Ada tried to call me. I do not ask anything at all. The funeral is October 11th. There is a service at the church where Ada had attended for 30 years. There is a reception at the community centre. I stand near the entrance for a while, shaking hands with people I do not know, accepting condolences about a loss that has already been taken from me in pieces. Then I move to the table with the refreshments. The finger sandwiches, the cookies, the pitcher of sweet tea. I am holding a copy of the funeral programme. It lists Ada's accomplishments. It lists her survivors. It does not list the dresses that were preserved in closets across the city. It does not list the girls who learned to sew by watching Ada work. It does not list the house that Ada built with her own hands. One repair at a time, one choice at a time, over 31 years. Paulette approaches me. I have not seen her since the funeral service. She is holding a folder. It is manila. It is thin, the kind of folder someone might use to organize a few pages. This is the estate summary, Paulette says. Ada finalized everything in October. You should see it. She hands me the folder. I open it. Inside are 3 documents. A beneficiary change form for the Riverside Bank savings account. A codicil to Ada's will. A power of attorney. Each one is dated October 11th, 2023. Each one bears a signature that Paulette says is Ada's. October 11th is the day of Ada's funeral. It is 7 days after Ada's recorded time of death. It is 28 days after Ada told me, in her voicemail, in a moment of clarity, in a moment when Paulette could not control what she was saying, that the March papers were the right ones. I look at the documents. I do not speak. Paulette is watching my face. I can feel her attention. I can feel that she is waiting for me to accept what she has handed me, to nod and acknowledge that Ada has given everything to Paulette, that this is what Ada wanted, that this is settled. I close the folder. I thank her. I set the folder down on the reception table. For the next hour, I move through the reception like someone who is functioning but not present. I accept more condolences. I nod at stories about Ada. I do not eat. I do not speak to Paulette again. I am aware of the folder sitting on the reception table. I am aware that it is still there, that no one else has picked it up, that the pages inside are still warm from Paulette's hands. Later, I do not remember if it is 20 minutes later or 2 hours later, I pick the folder up again. I find a quiet corner near the bathrooms. I study the signatures. Ada's handwriting is distinctive. She forms the letter D with a dip below the baseline. She forms the letter K the same way. She applies pen pressure with a consistency born from 50 years of seamstress work. Her hands know precision. Her hands have stitched seams that must be exact. Her hands do not shake. The signatures in the folder are not Ada's signatures. I close the folder. I do not confront Paulette. I do not ask her when Ada actually died, what the timeline actually was, why she has invented documents and attributed them to a woman who has been dead for a week. I do not say any of the things I want to say. I go home. I sit in my car in the parking lot of my apartment complex. It is dark. It is past 9 p.m. I am still wearing the dress I wore to Ada's funeral. I open my phone. I open my voicemail app. I scroll through the messages. I find the oldest one. It is from Ada. The timestamp says September 17th, 2023. This is 5 days before my attempt to visit Ada at the facility. This is 17 days before Ada dies. This is 4 days before Paulette tells me that Ada is sedated and needs quiet. This is before the isolation is complete. I press play. Ada's voice comes through the phone speaker. Her voice is clear. It is steady. She is not sedated. She is not resting. She is speaking with intention, with the deliberation of someone who understands that what she is saying needs to be said. Vivian, sweetheart, it's your grandmother. I wanted to call and tell you something while I still can, in case things get difficult. The March papers are the right ones. Do you understand? The March papers I had drawn up in 2019. Those are my real wishes. Don't let anyone tell you different. Don't let anyone convince you that I changed my mind. The March papers are the right ones. I'm being very clear about this because I know what your aunt is doing, and I want you to know that I don't want it. I want you to have the house. I want you to have my savings. The March papers say that. Those are my real wishes. Vivian, don't let anyone tell you different. The March papers. I listen to this message. I do not move. I do not take notes. I do not record it again or send it to anyone. I simply listen. Then I listen again. I play the message 7 times that night. I listen to it in my car. I listen to it the next morning at work, with my headphones in, sitting in the break room. I listen to it again that evening. Each time, the clarity of Ada's voice becomes more significant. Each time, the specificity of what she is saying becomes more impossible to ignore. The March papers March 2019. A will executed 5 years before her death, before Paulette had taken control of the narrative, before the visits were denied, before the isolation began. A will that names me as her primary heir. A will that predates the forged documents that Paulette is now presenting to the family as Ada's final wishes. I sit with this voicemail for weeks. I do not play it for the family. I do not use it as evidence in a conversation with Paulette. I do not call a lawyer and say, "Listen to this. My grandmother left me clear instructions, and my aunt is stealing from her estate." I listen to the voicemail. I let the truth of it settle into my body like something that will not move again. Later, much later, I will understand that this moment is the hinge. This is the moment when I stop accepting Paulette's version of events and start building my own account of what happened. This is the moment when I move from grief into documentation. This is the moment when I understand that the truth does not protect itself. Someone has to keep it. Someone has to hold it. Someone has to write it down and save it until the moment when it finally matters. But that is not yet. For now, I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot of my apartment complex, and I am listening to my grandmother's voice. And I am understanding that everything Paulette has told me is a lie. The notebook appears on the kitchen table of my apartment the night of Ada's funeral. I do not remember deciding to buy it. I do not remember driving to the store or standing in front of the office supply section or choosing this particular notebook over another. But there it is. A black moleskin with a bound spine. Write the date, October 11th, 2023. Then I write, Ada died today. Paulette says Ada's wishes have changed. That is all. For the first few days, that is all the notebook contains. Then Paulette texts me. It is October 14th, 3 days after the funeral. She is asking me to sign a form releasing Ada's personal effects from the hospital. She says I need to do this so that she can arrange for Ada's things to be packed and stored. She says it is just a formality, that it will not take long, that she will email me the form. I do not sign the form. Instead, I take a screenshot of the text message. I open my notebook and I paste the screenshot on a fresh page. I write the date in the margin. I write underneath, Paulette requesting I sign release form for Ada's personal effects. Why does she need my signature if she has already filed probate? I am not yet thinking of this as evidence. I am thinking of it as a record. I am thinking that if I write everything down, if I document everything carefully, the truth will eventually protect itself. But the truth does not protect itself. That is a lesson I am learning in real time. One message at a time, one discrepancy at a time. Over the next weeks, as October becomes November, my notebook begins to fill. I have never been a person who documents things. I am not naturally suspicious, but I am becoming someone who notices patterns. I am becoming someone who writes things down. Paulette texts me on October 18th. Ada got confused near the end. Even she didn't always understand her own paperwork. I take a screenshot. I add it to the notebook. I write underneath, Paulette explains that Ada was confused. Building narrative that Ada's mind was compromised at the end. I receive an email from Paulette on October 22nd. It is about the probate filing. She has already filed it. She says she has already submitted Ada's estate to the court. The filing is complete. She is sending me a copy for my records. I open the attachment. I read through it. I notice that under address of decedent's residence at time of death, she has written 88 Crestfield Lane. Her address. Not Ada's. 1114 Oleander Drive is where Ada lived. 88 Crestfield Lane is where Paulette lives. I print the email and the document. I add both to my notebook. I write, Paulette listed 88 Crestfield Lane, her house, as Ada's residence. Ada lived at 1114 Oleander Drive for 31 years. I do not confront her. I do not ask her why she has written the wrong address on a legal document. I do not demand an explanation. I simply write it Zerny. In November, Paulette calls me. She is explaining what she has decided to do with Ada's things. She is planning to move some items to her own house. She is planning to donate others. She tells me that Ada's sewing ledger, the leather-bound book where Ada recorded every dollar she spent and saved, is not very important. She tells me that she is going to store it, but that I probably do not want it. I tell her I want the ledger. I tell her I want Ada's fireproof box from the garden shed. I tell her these things belong with Ada's estate documents. She says, well, I'm not sure what's in that box. Ada never told me. I write this down. I write, Paulette claims not to know contents of Ada's fireproof box. But Ada kept this box locked with a key on a chain around her neck. What does Paulette know that I don't? By December, the notebook has filled 40 pages. I have documented every text message from Paulette. I have documented every email. I have created a timeline on page 15. September 12th, Ada admitted to hospital. September 14th, Ada transferred to palliative care. September 14th, Paulette begins denying me access. September 28th, Ada placed on comfort care. October 4th, Ada dies. October 11th, documents purportedly signed by Ada. The dates do not align. That is the first clear fact. The dates do not align. I have saved Ada's voicemail. I have listened to it dozens of times. I have transcribed it into my notebook. The March papers are the right ones. Vivian, don't let anyone tell you different. The March papers. The March papers? March 2019. A will that Ada signed when her mind was clear. When Paulette had not yet taken control. When Ada could speak freely. Then, on a Thursday night in July, 9 months after Ada's funeral, I am sitting at my desk with my desk lamp bent towards the surface. I have the October 2023 codicil in front of me. This is the document Paulette claims Ada signed. This is the document that supposedly changes Ada's will to make Paulette the sole heir. I have printed it out. I have studied it many times. But tonight, I am studying the signatures with an attention I have never given them before. I open my desk drawer. I pull out a Christmas card. It is from 2018. It arrived at my apartment on December 15th, 2018. I kept it because it was from Ada. The envelope is still inside. The card is still inside. On the back, Ada has written a note in her handwriting. The signature at the bottom is Ada's signature. I lay the codicil on my left. I lay the Christmas card on my right. I bend my desk lamp so that it illuminates both documents equally. The light is bright and direct. There is nowhere for the signatures to hide. Ada's signature on the Christmas card is distinctive. The A in Ada begins with an upstroke that curves to the right. The D in Ada makes a downward dip below the baseline. The K in Okafor makes the same downward dip. The pen pressure is consistent throughout. Heavier on the downstrokes, lighter on the lifts. The ink is blue. The hand that signed this card is the hand of someone who has spent 50 years in precision work. Someone whose fingers understand control, whose wrist understands pressure, whose mind understands that every letter must be exact. The signature on the October 2023 codicil is different. The A begins differently. The curve is there, but it is less pronounced, as if the person signing did not fully commit to the movement. The D does not dip. The K does not dip. The pen pressure is uniform, the same weight throughout, as if the signature was traced rather than written. There is no variation. There is no muscle memory. There is no personality in the signature. It is a signature that looks like someone tried to copy Ada's signature by studying the shape, rather than by remembering how Ada's hand actually moved. I sit with this discovery for a long time. I do not move. I do not call anyone. I do not speak aloud. I only understand that something is wrong. Something is deeply, fundamentally wrong. Then I open my notebook. I find the page where I have written the word discrepancy. It is from March, when I first began to question the timeline. When I first started to notice that things did not add up, I read the word. It is encircled 3 times in pen. I have circled it again and again as the months have passed, and the pattern has become clearer. I draw a line through discrepancy. It is a decisive line. It crosses out the word completely. Then I write one word above it, in capital letters. Forgery. I do not erase discrepancy. I simply cross it out and write forgery above it. The act of crossing out and rewriting is important. It is a record of my thinking. It is a moment where the documentation stops being observation and becomes something else. It becomes accusation. It becomes certainty. I've been documenting for 9 months. I've been filling a notebook with screenshots and dates and observations. I have been the person in the margins, the person taking notes, the person building a record that no one else knows about. But this is the moment when documentation becomes investigation. This is the moment when I understand that I am not just recording what Paulette is doing. I am building a case. I do not sleep that night. I sit at my desk and I study both signatures under the lamp. I compare them. I study the loops and the dips and the pressure. I look for points of similarity. I find very few. The only similarity is that they are both supposedly signed by the same person. But they are not. One is authentic. One is a copy. By morning, I have filled 3 more pages of my notebook with observations about the signatures. I have noted the specific differences, the length of the downward dips, the angle of the upstroke on the A, the weight of the pen, the consistency of the baseline. I have sketched both signatures side by side. I have written measurements. I know I am not a forensic document examiner. I know my observations might be dismissed as the work of someone without training, someone with an axe to grind, someone who is looking for evidence of a crime because she is angry about being disinherited. But I also know that I am not wrong. I know what I am looking at. I know the difference between authentic handwriting and a traced signature. Over the next weeks, I begin to search for a forensic document examiner. I open the State Bar website on a Friday evening. I search for certified professionals in the field of document examination. There are not many. Document examination is a specialized field. Most people do not spend their careers studying the pressure of a pen or the angle of a baseline. But I find one. Dr. Rochelle Winters. Her profile says she has been examining documents for 32 years. Her credentials are impeccable. Her testimonies have been used in courtrooms across the country. She has examined signatures in fraud cases, will cases, inheritance disputes. I write down her name. I write down her phone number. I write down her website. I look at her fee schedule. It is on page 3 of her intake form. For a comprehensive forensic analysis, signature comparison, timeline analysis, examination of paper and ink, the fee is $3,800. It is a significant amount of money. It is more money than I have readily available. But I have savings. I have money I have been setting aside since 2019 for a future that is not yet clear. I have approximately $4,200 in a separate savings account. I have been saving this money slowly, $50 at a time, because I could not imagine what I was saving for. Now I know! I make the decision quietly. There is no moment of epiphany. There is no dramatic realization. There is no conversation with myself where I weigh the costs and benefits. I simply write the fee in my notebook, and I understand that I will pay it. I understand that I will call Dr. Winters. I understand that I will tell her what I have found. I understand that I will pay the $3,800 from my savings account without telling anyone, not Paulette, not my mother, not even Camille, my attorney. The decision is quiet because it is final. My folder is now 214 pages thick. It sits on my desk. I have added more pages since the night I compared the signatures. I have added Dr. Winters' contact information. I have added the fee schedule. I have added notes about what to include in my submission to her. Which documents are most important? Which signatures she should examine? Which timeline she should verify? 214 pages of documentation, screenshots, printouts, timelines, observations, my handwritten notes about the signatures, photocopies of documents, the Christmas card, the codicil, the voicemail transcript, the probate filing with the wrong address, bank statements, medical records, the dates when Paulette denied me access to Ada, logged carefully in my notebook, marked with check marks next to each date. For 9 months, I have been filling this folder. For 9 months, I have been writing things down, collecting evidence, building a record of what Paulette has done and when she did it. The folder is heavy. I have never held anything that felt so substantial for reasons that have nothing to do with weight. This folder is the tangible proof of my attention. This folder is what happens when someone decides to document instead of confront. This folder is the difference between letting something happen and building a case. I have not yet called Dr. Winters, but I know I will. I know that next week I will pick up the phone and I will dial her number and I will tell her what I have found. I know that I will submit my 214 pages to her. I know that I will arrange payment. I know that I will wait for her report. And I know that when her report arrives, when Dr. Winters has examined the signatures and studied the timeline and confirmed what I already know, everything will change. the documentation that I have been building in the margins, the quiet work of noticing and writing and collecting. This will become something more than a personal record. This will become evidence. This will become the thing that forces Paulette to see that she is not dealing with someone who will disappear. She is dealing with someone who keeps records. I call Dr. Winters on a Monday morning in late July. I have written down what I want to say. I have rehearsed the call 3 times in my car before dialing. I do not mention that I am not a lawyer. I do not mention that I do not have permission from my attorney. I simply tell her what I have found and ask if she will examine the documents. She asks how many pages I have. 214, I say. There is a pause. Then, that's a substantial collection. I'll need to review everything. My fee for a comprehensive analysis is $3,800. It will take 4 to 6 weeks depending on complexity and current caseload. I tell her I need it in 2 weeks. I tell her the hearing is scheduled for January 9th. She says, "That's very tight. Rush work costs more. But if you can get me everything by the end of this week, I can make it a priority. I've done expedited analyses before." I tell her yes. I tell her I will send the materials immediately. I tell her I will pay the fee in full and that I will add an additional rush fee if necessary. I do not tell Camille. I do not call her and say I have decided to engage a forensic document examiner without her knowledge. I do not ask her permission or her advice. I simply package my 214 pages into a secure cloud folder, and I send Dr. Winters the access information, and I transfer $3,800 from my savings account to her bank account, and I say nothing to anyone. The waiting is worse than the documentation. During the documentation phase, the 9 months of comparing signatures and taking screenshots and filling notebooks, I had something to do. I had purpose. I had forward motion. During the waiting, I have only time and uncertainty. During the waiting, I wonder if I've made a mistake. I wonder if Dr. Winters will find that I was wrong about the signatures. I wonder if the pen pressure differences I noticed are not actually significant. I wonder if I have spent $3,800 on an analysis that will yield nothing. I check my email 5 times a day. I check it at work, during lunch, when I get home, before bed, first thing in the morning. I have set up notifications on my phone, so I know the moment an email arrives from Dr. Winters' address. On the evening of January 3rd, I am sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where I started my notebook on the night of Ada's funeral, and I open my email at 11:43 p.m., and there is a message from Dr. Rochelle Winters. The subject line says, "Forensic analysis complete, confidential." I do not open it immediately. I sit with the closed email for a full minute. My hand is on the trackpad of my laptop. I can see the preview of the message. "Dear Ms. Okafor Mills, please find attached my comprehensive forensic analysis of the documents you submitted. My findings are as detailed in the attached report. I am available for testimony should the matter proceed to legal proceedings." Then I click. The email opens. There is an attachment, a 7-page PDF titled Forensic Document Examination Report. I download it. My hands are shaking slightly. I do not understand why I am nervous. I already know what I will find, but I am nervous anyway. The first page contains her letterhead. Rochelle Winters, Certified Forensic Document Examiner. Her credentials: 32 years of experience. Federal court testimony. Certified by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners. Publications in peer-reviewed journals. I turn to page 2, examination methodology. Page 3 begins with her findings. She has compared the signature on the October 11th, 2023 codicil to the authenticated signatures on Ada's documents. The 2019 will the Christmas card from 2018. Check signed between 2015 and 2023. Bank account opening forms from multiple years. The signature on the October 11th codicil does not match any of these authenticated signatures. Page 4 details the specific forensic markers. Pen pressure. The authenticated signatures show variation in pen pressure. Heavier on downstrokes, lighter on lifts, consistent with natural handwriting production. The codicil signature shows uniform pen pressure throughout. Consistent with mechanical reproduction. Letter slant. The authenticated signatures show a consistent rightward slant of approximately 18 degrees. The codicil signature shows no slant. The letters stand nearly vertical. Baseline deviation. The authenticated signatures maintain a consistent baseline. Ada's natural writing sits on an imaginary line. The codicil signature deviates. Some letters sit above the baseline, and some below with no consistency. And then, on page 5, the sentence I have been waiting for. The examined signature is not consistent with natural handwriting production and exhibits tracing artifacts consistent with mechanical reproduction from a known source document. The known source document is identified with specificity on pages 5 and 6. A Riverside bank account opening form from September 2018. Ada's signature on that form. An authenticated signature made while Ada was in full possession of her faculties. Before Paulette took control, before any of this happened, shows identical forensic markers to the signature on the codicil. Dr. Winters concludes, the signature on the October 11th, 2023 codicil was traced from the 2018 bank form. Not forged freehand, not imitated by studying the signature and attempting to copy it. Traced, placed on top of the bank form and mechanically reproduced by following the lines. Paulette did not even attempt to forge Ada's signature naturally. Paulette laid a sheet of paper over an old document and copied the lines like a child tracing a picture. I read page 5 aloud to myself at midnight in my kitchen. I read page 6 aloud. I read the conclusion on page 7 aloud. I read the sentence again. The examined signature is not consistent with natural handwriting production and exhibits tracing artifacts consistent with mechanical reproduction from a known source document. Then I realize I have not told Camille. I have paid $3,800 from my personal savings. I have engaged a forensic document examiner without my attorney's knowledge or permission. I have received a comprehensive analysis that proves, with specificity, with peer-reviewed methodology, with 32 years of expertise behind it, that Paulette forged Ada's signature. And I have not told Camille. I do not call her that night. I go to bed. I go to work the next day. I sit at my desk at Meridian Financial Group, and I review spreadsheets, I prepare reports, I attend a meeting about quarterly projections. I do all of this while holding the knowledge of the report inside my chest, the weight of it, the reality of it. At 6:14 p.m. I'm sitting in my 2011 Honda Civic in the Meridian parking garage. The garage is half empty. It is dark. The fluorescent lights overhead cast everything in a flat, shadowless grey. I open my phone and I call Camille. She answers on the second ring. "I've been waiting to hear from you," she says. "I wanted to touch base about the hearing. I need to tell you something. I've done something without telling you first." There is a pause. I can hear her breathing on the line. I say, "I engaged a forensic document examiner. Independently, I found her through the State Bar directory. I paid for it from my own savings account. The report arrived last night." "Viv, you shouldn't have done that without." "I know, but the findings are conclusive, and I need you to hear this directly from me before you read it in the report." I open my email on my laptop. I pull up Dr. Winter's document. I scroll to page 4. I find the paragraph. I read it aloud. Slowly. The words coming out of my mouth in the cold parking garage. My breath visible in the January air. My voice steady and flat. The examined signature is not consistent with natural handwriting production and exhibits tracing artifacts consistent with mechanical reproduction from a known source document. There is silence on the line. 7 full seconds. I count them internally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then Camille speaks. "Send me the full report. Right now." I do not apologize for acting without her permission. I do not explain my reasoning or justify my decision. I simply say, "I'm sending it now." And I hang up and I email her the report. And I sit in my car in the parking garage and I understand that the private work is finished. The documentation I built alone in the margins is no longer private. It is no longer speculation or suspicion, or my word against Paulette's. It is now evidence. It is now official. It is now a 7-page forensic analysis by a certified examiner with 32 years of testimony experience. The next morning, Camille calls me at work. "I've read the entire report," she says. "Every page. This is solid work. This is admissible. This is exactly what we needed." She tells me she is going to submit the report to the court today, 6 days before the hearing. She tells me that Paulette will receive a copy of it with her case materials. She tells me that Paulette will now know that her forgery has been examined by an expert and found to be mechanically reproduced. "She'll understand now," Camille says. "She'll understand that this is not a situation she can bluff her way through." I do not know what Paulette will do with this knowledge, but I know that she will no longer operate from the assumption that she is safe. She will no longer believe that the documents she submitted can survive scrutiny. She will no longer believe that I am someone she can simply dismiss. 1 week remains until the hearing. Thursday evening, the day before the hearing. I am home from work at 6:47 p.m. I have not eaten. I have made coffee, and I have not drunk it. I am sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open, refreshing the court docket every 3 minutes, looking for confirmation that Dr. Winter's report has been received and marked into the record. The docket shows nothing. I refresh again. Nothing. I close the laptop. I open it. I refresh again. Camille had submitted the report to the court clerk in person on Friday afternoon. She had the signature receipt in her hand. She had confirmed the 214 pages, the forensic analysis, the 7-page report from Dr. Winters. She had walked out of the courthouse with the receipt in her pocket and the certainty that the evidence was now in the judge's hands. But the online docket has not updated. 3 days have passed. The system should have reflected the receipt by now. It has not. At 8:14 p.m., my phone rings. The caller ID says Paulette Okafor-Reeves. It is the first time she has called me directly in 26 months. The first time since Ada died. The first time since October 11th, when she handed me the folder at the reception table and I knew that she was lying. I answer. "Hello, Vivienne," she says. Her voice is composed. It is the register of someone who has stood in front of a classroom for 40 years, who has learned to speak with authority, who has rehearsed what she plans to say, and is now delivering it. "Hi, Paulette. I wanted to call you before tomorrow to let you know that the family has had conversations. We're all on the same page here." I do not respond. I am listening to her voice, trying to understand what this call means. "Your Uncle Robert and your cousins Michelle and James have agreed to come tomorrow. They're prepared to testify that you were not present for Ada in her final months, that you were bitter and difficult when you did visit, that Ada was in a lot of distress because of your absence." Still, I do not respond. I am holding the phone. My other hand is flat on the kitchen table. She continues, and her voice does not waver. "And Vivienne, I also want you to know that if you're planning to present some kind of forensic report or some last-minute evidence that you've obtained, which I suspect you are, it's going to look like exactly what it is. It's going to look like a woman who couldn't accept that she wasn't chosen, like you're trying to discredit your own grandmother's final wishes because you're angry about being disinherited." I say, "That's not what this is about." "Well, that's what it's going to look like to the judge. And the judge will see it that way too. He'll see a granddaughter who's bitter and a family that's aligned on what Ada actually wanted. We're prepared to speak for Ada. We're prepared to testify about her final wishes and her final state of mind. The family is united on this. Vivienne." She does not say goodbye. She hangs up. I sit with the phone in my hand for a full minute. My kitchen is very quiet. The refrigerator hums. The clock on the wall ticks. I can hear a car passing on the street outside. Then I set the phone down on the table. For one specific moment, I can mark the time with precision. It is 8:16 p. I sit with the possibility that 26 months of work may not be enough. I sit with the weight of what Paulette has just told me. The family is aligned, not just Paulette claiming to be aligned. Actual family members, people I know, people who were at Ada's funeral, people who said they loved her. They are prepared to stand in a courtroom and testify that I was absent, that I was bitter, that I was the problem. Paulette has spent 4 decades building credibility with this family. 4 decades of being present, being reliable, being the one who organized the holidays and remembered the birthdays and showed up. She has been the family infrastructure. She has been the person the family depended on. She has earned trust through decades of showing up. I have 214 pages of documentation. But Paulette has a family that already believes her. Paulette has family members who are willing to testify under oath that I am the one who is lying. The documentation I built was built alone, in the margins, in secret. The family alignment Paulette describes was built in plain sight, at dinner tables and holiday gatherings, in regular phone calls and visits, in the accumulated weight of presence. I sit with this for 2 minutes, and then I stand. Then I sit back down. Then I open my laptop again. I refresh the court docket. Still nothing. Still no mark that the report has been received. At 8:47 p.m., Camille calls. "The docket still hasn't updated," she says without preamble. "I know. I've been checking." I submitted the report to the court clerk in person on Friday afternoon. I have the receipt. The clerk stamped it. I watched her file it, but it's not showing on the online system. What does that mean? It could mean there's a delay in the system updating. Could be a clerical issue. The court system is old. Things don't always sync immediately. But it could also mean there's a problem. What kind of problem? If the judge doesn't have the report in his file when you walk into that courtroom tomorrow morning, we have a situation. We'll have the receipt, but the judge might not have had time to read the analysis before the hearing starts. So what do we do? I'm calling the clerk first thing in the morning. I'm confirming that the packet is in the judge's possession. I'm making sure he's had time to review it. If he hasn't received it, we ask for a continuance. We don't go forward without the judge reading Dr. Winter's analysis. That report is everything. Without it, we're just presenting your opinion against Paulette's. We hang up. I'm alone at my kitchen table. The coffee I made at 6:52 p.m. is still in the cup. Cold now. A thin film on top. The laptop is open to the court docket. The page shows nothing. My notebook is in front of me. The same notebook I opened on the night of Ada's funeral. The same notebook I have been filling for 26 months with dates and observations and truths that no one else was documenting. At 10:51 p.m., I open the notebook to a fresh page. I write the date, January 9th, 2025. No, that's wrong. Tomorrow is January 9th. Today is January 8th. I write the correct date. I write the time, 10:51 p.m. Then I write, she called, 8:14 p.m. The first call in 26 months. She knows what's in that folder. She's warning me. She's trying to get ahead of the evidence by telling me the family is already aligned, by telling me in advance that they will testify that I'm the liar. She's preparing the judge to disbelieve anything I present. I pause. My pen is in my hand. The page is open. Then I write, the docket hasn't updated. The report might not be in the judge's folder. The system might fail. Everything could fall apart tomorrow morning. I pause again. Then I write it down anyway. Write down that she called at 8:14 p.m. Write down that she knows. Write down that fear is a tell. Write down that a woman who had evidence on her side would not call tonight to warn you. A woman with nothing to hide would let the evidence speak. She called because she's afraid. She called because the evidence matters. I close the notebook. I do not turn off the light. I sit at the kitchen table with the notebook closed in front of me, and I understand that tomorrow, when I walk into that courtroom, everything will depend on whether the judge has opened the folder. Everything will depend on whether someone, somewhere in that courthouse, has marked the documents into the record and placed them in his hands. Everything will depend on whether the paper trail leads where it's supposed to lead. In less than 12 hours, I will find out if all of this was enough. The hearing begins at 9 a.m. sharp. Judge Harwick enters through the side door. Everyone stands. He takes his seat at the bench. The manila folder, the one containing Dr. Winter's report, and the 214 pages of evidence, is already sitting on his desk. It has been there since Friday. He does not acknowledge it yet. Paulette sits at the respondents' table with her attorney, a woman named Sandra Kirkwood, who specializes in probate disputes. Paulette is wearing a navy blazer. Her hair is freshly done in the tight curls she has worn for 40 years. She is holding a small vase wrapped in a napkin. Inside the vase are the pink carnations, Ada's flower. She has brought them into the courtroom and placed them on her table, positioned to face the judge's bench. I sit at my counsel table with Camille. The gallery behind us is nearly empty. A few court watchers. No family members. No cousins. No uncles. No one from the family has come to support Paulette. At 9:47 a.m., Sandra Kirkwood stands. She is prepared. She has practiced this presentation dozens of times. She walks to the front of the courtroom, moving with the deliberation of someone who has testified before judges 100 times. She is holding 3 documents in a manila folder. She does not rush. "Your Honor," she says, "I'm here on behalf of Ms. Paulette Okafor-Reeves regarding the estate of Adaize Okafor. The decedent passed away on October 4th, 2023. Ms. Okafor-Reeves was the primary caregiver for the decedent in her final months. The decedent has left clear documented wishes regarding the disposition of her estate, and we are here to present those wishes to the court for proper execution." She pulls out the first document. It is the beneficiary change form. The page is white. The document is dated October 11th, 2023. The signature at the bottom is in blue ink. "This is a beneficiary change form." Sandra continues. "Executed by the decedent in October 2023. This form changes the beneficiary designation on the decedent's savings account at Riverside Bank, an account containing approximately $77,000, from the original beneficiary, Ms. Vivian Okafor-Mills, to Ms. Paulette Okafor-Reeves. The form is signed by the decedent and notarized by a licensed notary public on October 11th, 2023. She holds the document so Judge Harwick can see the signature clearly. Then she sets it on the table in front of him. "The second document," she continues, walking back to her table and returning with the second page, "is a codicil to the decedent's existing will, also executed in October 2023. This codicil modifies the decedent's prior will, a will from 2019, to name Ms. Okafor-Reeves as the primary heir to the decedent's entire estate. This includes the property located at 1114 Oleander Drive in Garland, Texas, which has been appraised at $312,000, as well as the savings account previously mentioned. The codicil is signed by the decedent and notarized." She sets this document down next to the first. "And finally," she says, holding up the third page, "a power of attorney document, also executed in October 2023 and notarized, which grants Ms. Okafor-Reeves full authority to act on behalf of the decedent in all matters. All 3 documents are signed by the decedent and have been properly notarized by a licensed professional. The decedent's wishes are unambiguous." She sets the third document on the judge's bench. "Aye! 3 pages, 3 signatures. All dated October 11th, 2023. All notarized. All claiming to represent Ada's final wishes. Sandra Kirkwood returns to her seat. She sits next to Paulette. Paulette is still holding the vase of carnations. Camille stands. I have instructed her explicitly. Object on procedural grounds. But do not reveal the evidence packet. Hold it. Wait for the judge to open the folder. Your Honor, Camille says. The petitioner objects to the admission of these documents on the grounds of significant procedural irregularities and substantive questions regarding their authenticity and the circumstances of their execution. We request that the court allow us to present evidence regarding these documents before making any determinations regarding their validity. The judge nods. Noted. I will hear your evidence. It is 9:47 a.m. Judge Harwick reaches toward the bench. The manila folder is sitting on his desk where Camille placed it on Friday afternoon. He picks it up. He opens it. The first page is the cover letter from Camille, dated Friday. He reads it. Then he turns the page and begins to read, Dr. Winter's 7-page report. The courtroom is absolutely silent. The court reporter's fingers are still on her machine. Paulette is still holding the vase. Her attorney is taking notes on a legal pad, but she is also watching the judge's face, trying to read his reaction. I am watching the judge. I have been waiting for this moment for 26 months. I have documented, compared signatures, taken screenshots, paid money from my savings, waited for the forensic report, and now the report is in the judge's hands, and he is reading it. He turns to page 2. Page 3. His expression does not change. He is not reacting. He is simply reading. He turns to page 4. Page 5. He removes his reading glasses and sets them on the desk. He looks up at Sandra Kirkwood. Ms. Kirkwood, I need to ask you a question. Prior to submitting these documents to this court, did anyone, specifically a forensic document examiner or any professional trained in document analysis, examine these signatures to verify their authenticity? Sandra Kirkwood shifts in her chair. She has not anticipated this question. She says, Your Honor, all 3 documents were notarized by a licensed notary public. The notarization process confirms the authenticity of the signatures. That's not what I asked, Judge Harwick says. His voice is level. I asked whether a forensic document examiner, someone trained to analyze handwriting, signatures, pen pressure, baseline deviation, and other forensic markers, reviewed these documents prior to their submission to this court. No, Your Honor, the documents were notarized. We relied on the notarization process to establish authenticity. A notarization does not establish that a signature is authentic. Judge Harwick says, A notary verifies identity. A notary does not analyze the signature itself. I'm going to ask you once more. Was a forensic document examiner consulted regarding these documents? No, Your Honor. Judge Harwick sets the folder down on his desk. He sits back in his chair. He looks at the courtroom. I have here a comprehensive forensic document examination report prepared by Dr. Rochelle Winters, a certified forensic document examiner with 32 years of professional experience. Dr. Winters has testified in federal court and is recognized as an expert in document analysis. Doctor, Winters was subpoenaed by the petitioner. Doctor, Winters, will you please come forward and be sworn in? Doctor, Winters stands from the gallery where she has been sitting since 8:30 a.m. She is a woman in her mid-50s with grey hair pulled back in a clip. She walks to the front of the courtroom. She raises her right hand and is sworn to tell the truth. She sits in the witness stand. Judge Harwick picks up Dr. Winters' report. He has the 7 pages in front of him. He reads from page 3. Dr. Winters, can you summarize your findings regarding the signature on the codicil dated October 11th, 2023? Doctor, Winters speaks in a calm, precise register. Her voice is measured. She does not rush. Yes, Your Honour. I examined the signature on the codicil dated October 11th, 2023, and compared it to authenticated signatures from the decedent spanning a period of more than 30 years. My analysis focused on 4 primary forensic markers: pen pressure, baseline deviation, letter slant, and distinctive characteristics unique to the decedent's handwriting. My findings indicate that the signature on the codicil exhibits forensic markers that are inconsistent with natural handwriting production by the decedent. Please describe these markers, Judge Harwick says. First, pen pressure. In authenticated signatures, checks, bank documents, a Christmas card from 2018, the decedent's original will from 2019, the pen pressure is variable. The pressure is heavier on the downstrokes and lighter on the lifts. This is consistent with how a person naturally writes. On the codicil signature, the pen pressure is uniform throughout. It does not vary. This uniformity is consistent with mechanical reproduction rather than natural handwriting. She holds up a comparison photograph showing the 2 signatures side by side. Second, baseline deviation. In the authenticated signatures, the letters sit consistently on an imaginary baseline. The signature moves smoothly from left to right with minor natural variations. On the codicil signature, the baseline is erratic. Some letters sit above the imaginary line. Some sit below. This inconsistency is another marker of mechanical reproduction. She shows another photograph. Third, letter slant. The authenticated signatures show a consistent rightward slant of approximately 18 degrees. The codicil signature shows minimal slant. The letters are nearly vertical. And fourth, distinctive characteristics. The decedent has a very particular way of forming 2 letters, D and K. In every authenticated signature I examined, spanning decades, these letters dip below the baseline. It is a characteristic of this person's handwriting. On the codicil signature, these letters do not dip. They sit on the baseline, consistent with all the other letters. She shows a third photograph with the distinctive letters circled. Dr. Winters, Judge Harwick says. Based on these findings, what is your conclusion regarding the signature on the codicil? My conclusion is that the signature on the codicil is not a natural production of the decedent's handwriting. It is a traced signature, mechanically reproduced from another document. The courtroom is silent. Paulette is still holding the vase of carnations. Can you identify the source document? Judge Harwick asks. Dr. Winters refers to page 5 of her report. Yes, Your Honour. The source document is a Riverside bank account opening form from September 2018. When I compared the signature on that document to the signature on the codicil, I found that they are identical In every forensic marker, the pen pressure is the same. The baseline deviation is the same. The letter slant is the same. The absence of the distinctive D and K dips is the same. The signatures are so similar that they are consistent with mechanical tracing. Placing one document on top of the other and reproducing the signature by following the lines. And this source document, Judge Harwick says, was created in September 2018. Yes, Your Honor. And the codicil is dated October 11th, 2023? Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Winters, when did the decedent pass away? According to the documents provided to me, the decedent passed away on October 4th, 2023. Judge Harwick sets Dr. Winters' report down on his desk. He looks at the 3 documents that Sandra Kirkwood presented: the beneficiary change form, the codicil, and the power of attorney. All dated October 11th, 2023, 7 days after the decedent's recorded time of death. He picks up the codicil. He studies the signature for a moment. Then he places it face down on the bench in front of him. He picks up the beneficiary change form. He studies that signature. Then he places it face down, next to the codicil. He picks up the power of attorney. He studies that signature. Then he places it face down, next to the other 2. 3 documents, all face down, all placed deliberately, one at a time, with intention. He removes his reading glasses. He sets them on the bench. Then he looks directly at Paulette's table. No, he looks past Paulette's table. He looks at where I'm sitting with Camille. He looks at me. Ms. Ackerford-Mills, is there anything you would like to say? I stand. The entire courtroom is watching. Camille places her hand on my arm. I look at the 3 face-down documents on the judge's bench. I look at Paulette, who has not moved, who is still holding the vase of carnations. I look at the judge. The documents speak for themselves, Your Honor. I sit. Sandra Kirkwood stands immediately. Her face is pale. She says, Your Honor, I would like to request a recess. My client and I need time to discuss the evidence and our position moving forward. Granted. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. The judge stands. Everyone in the courtroom stands. The judge leaves the bench through the side door. The courtroom empties slowly. The court reporter leaves. The bailiff leaves. Camille squeezes my hand. She stands and begins gathering papers. Paulette has not moved. She is sitting at the respondent's table. She is still holding the vase of pink carnations. The vase is wrapped in the napkin. The flowers are still arranged the way she arranged them this morning in the courthouse hallway. Her attorney is whispering to her, urgently. But Paulette does not respond. She is looking at the 3 documents that are lying face down on the judge's bench. She has not let go of the carnations since she sat down. I'll write the after the gavel section of the YouTube script now, incorporating the key story beats and guidelines from the previous conversation. After the gavel, the courtroom doors close on an empty bench. Judge Harwick's ruling still echoes in the gallery. A decisive victory for Vivian, but not the kind that feels like winning. The ledgers are hers. The deception is exposed. Paulette's empire, built on the careful theft of her sister's life, collapses under the weight of documented evidence. And yet, as everyone files out into the marble hallway of the courthouse. There's no triumph in the air. There's only the sound of expensive heels on expensive stone, and Paulette walking past her niece without a glance, without the carnations she once used to explain her every absence. That detail matters. It's easy to miss. Paulette leaves without flowers. For someone who weaponized the language of apology, who wrapped every betrayal in blossoms and greeting cards, to walk away empty-handed is the closest she'll ever come to admitting the truth. She doesn't even pretend anymore. Vivian stands in the hallway, papers in hand, watching her aunt disappear into the crowd. She should feel relieved. She should feel vindicated, but what she mostly feels is tired. This wasn't the outcome she wanted when she first discovered the ledger. Not really. The outcome she wanted was for Ada to tell her the truth while Ada was alive. The outcome she wanted was to never have to sit in a courtroom and prove that her mother loved her. That's the hollow part of justice. It arrives too late. But later, after the cameras stop following her, after the lawyers have collected their fees and filed their paperwork, Vivian returns to the garden. Not the manicured one her aunt cultivated, the wild one, the one that exists because Ada planted it years ago without asking permission. There's a shed out there, the kind of place where old tools gather dust and spiders build empires in the corners. Vivian has walked past it 100 times. Today, something tells her to go inside. The ledger is there, but it's not the one from the courtroom. It's older, the leather is soft from handling, and the handwriting is unmistakably her mother's. Not the efficient script of business entries, but something more intimate. Pages of accounts, yes, but also notes in the margins, sketches of flowers, dates, names, and then, pressed between the back cover and the binding, a single envelope. The handwriting on the front reads, "For Vivian, whenever she needs to know, it was always her." It's not a note. It's not an apology. It's not the thing Ada would have said if she'd lived long enough to say it. But it's close. Inside are seeds, carnation seeds, the exact variety Paulette used to buy in bulk. And beneath them, in Ada's careful hand, she uses flowers to lie. You'll need to learn to speak a different language. These grow anywhere, even in the dark. Plant them and remember that beauty doesn't ask for permission. This is the real ruling, not the judgment that favoured Vivian in court, but the one Ada pronounced years ago when she planted these seeds in envelopes and hid them in gardens. The verdict that says, "You are worth fighting for. You are worth lying for. You are worth every transgression I committed in your name. I hope you'll forgive me, not because I deserve it, but because you deserve the peace of knowing it was all for you." Vivian plants the seeds, not in the manicured garden where Paulette used to walk, in the wild one, in the places where nothing is controlled, nothing is managed, nothing is a careful performance of respectability. She plants them. And for the first time since the ruling came down, she cries, not from relief, but from understanding. Camille finds her there, dirt under her fingernails, tears on her face, the open envelope beside her. She reads it over Vivian's shoulder and says what everyone else has been saying. "Clean win." Vivian shakes her head. "It's not a win if nobody wins," she says, And Camille, who has known her long enough to understand that this isn't bitterness, it's clarity, sits down beside her and helps her plant the rest. Would you like me to refine any section or adjust the tone/pacing? Vivian did not announce that she was building a case. For 2 years, she collected time-stamped correspondence, documented every exchange, every inconsistency, every lie that repeated in itself in Paulette's own handwriting across months and years. She obtained a forensic document examiner's report. For neither piece of evidence was mentioned to Paulette. Neither was acknowledged aloud. Both were already bound in the judge's folder, waiting in the courtroom, by the time Paulette walked in believing she had already won. Vivian did not do this to feel vindicated. She did this so that when the moment came, the pages would speak first. The pages would speak without interruption. They would be the only voice that mattered, the only voice Paulette had no way to silence or dismiss. In a contested probate hearing, the person who kept the timeline intact, who documented what happened and when, becomes the witness the court listens to first. The documents do not need to shout. They do not need to perform. They only need to exist, dated and exact, preserved and patient, waiting in a folder for the moment they are most needed. Somewhere in your own family, there is a document that you have not opened in a year, maybe longer. A letter, a photograph, an email, a hospital record, a bank statement, a contract. You already know what might be inside. Today is a good day to find out.